Let's talk about bridge pose. Bridge pose can be done in an active manner and in a passive manner. So I will go over all types of bridge pose with props and without. Okay, so starting on the back, feet are flat, roughly about hip width apart. You don't want the inner edges together in yoga. You want them to be slightly separated so that you have a better base for when you lift your hips. So from here, the head comes back. Heels are generally closer to the sit bones than not. And generally speaking, the fingertips may brush the heels, but if you're someone who has shorter arms, you may not be able to reach the heels, and that's okay too. Just take a peek down and make sure that you can't really see your feet. Maybe you just see the pinky edge of the foot, just for a guideline. Yeah? So to move into bridge, you're going to send energy down through the feet. On your inhale, tuck the pelvis and roll up onto your shoulders. Once you're up here, tuck the shoulder blades underneath. Interlace the fingers if they reach one another, and then from there, press the arms down into the mat. Now, once you're up here, be very mindful that the thighs don't start to wander away from one another. We want to keep them parallel and all edges of the feet connected. Sometimes when I'm teaching, I see people lift their toes up and wave at them, and although as the instructor, I appreciate you waving hello to me with those toes, make sure that they are rooted and grounded down into the mat. It helps to support the pose. Also here, let's shift the focus up towards the head. Press the back of the head into the mat. This helps to open up your throat for the breath. Now to deepen this a little bit, press through the legs, move your chest closer to your chin. The belly here is lifted and working just as much as the glutes and the hamstrings. There's no way to do this position without using your glutes and your hamstrings, but the belly is also very active here. So to come out of this pose, you want to untangle the fingers, untuck the shoulders first so that you're nice and broad along the shoulders, and then slowly lower the spine down, bringing the hips to the mat. Now, after doing back bends, whether it's this pose or something deeper, allow your spine to neutralize in its own time without moving the legs or hugging them in immediately. Instead, take a nice deep belly breath. When you do deep belly breaths like that, it actually expands the lower back as well. So if you slide your hands underneath the lower back and then take a nice deep belly breath, you may feel a little bit of movement back there as well. And this just helps to release the muscles and lets the spine come back to neutral. So that's the main variation of bridge pose. If you are at that point and it feels good, but you feel like you can go further without any impingement or any compression on your lower back, there is another way to get the hips higher and to get a little bit more extreme in your back bend. So you start the same way, press the feet down, tuck the pelvis, and roll up onto the shoulders. Same thing here, tuck the shoulder blades underneath and interlace the fingers. You want the elbows to be in line with the shoulders as best as you could guess, since you can't see them. From here, lift your heels up, come up onto the balls of your feet. That'll give you a little bit more height. Then release the hands and bring the heel of your hand to your hip. And then let the other side come as well. Now here my thumbs are out. If you tuck your thumb underneath, it'll hurt your hand. So make sure all 5 fingers are to the outside of your hips. Then from here, instead of pulling your hands towards your head, press them down toward your heels or the knees. Then from there, if it's available, let the heels come down. You'll feel a nice stretch through the front of the hips, through the belly, the abdominals. If this is painful on your neck or shoulders in any shape or form, gently release and come out of the pose. Now from this deeper bridge posture, to come out of it, lift your knees so you have some space. Let the hands release. Untuck the shoulders. Use your abdominal muscles and slowly descend down to the mat. Once the hips are down, you can let your heels release down. Maybe take a little baby adjustment in the shoulders. And a nice deep belly breath. So now we'll move into the restorative variation of bridge pose. And for this restorative variation, blocks, pillows, blankets, we want to use the props to help support the hips upward. So we get into this the same way, from a flat spine on the mat, from a reclined position. Heels, again, are underneath the sit bones. On the inhale, tuck the pelvis and roll up onto your shoulders. Now, in this restorative variation, we keep the shoulders nice and wide and broad. Instead, take a block, slide it underneath the hips. And then rest the hips down onto the block. Now, you want this block to be on your sacrum. That's the flat part of your hips. We don't want it on the tailbone, because that's uncomfortable, nor do we want it on the lower back because it's not so stable. We want the pelvis to be sitting fully on the block. And once you're here, you may feel some opening in the front of the hips. You may feel this in the lower back. And those of you that have herniations in the lower spine, in your lumbar spine, this might not be the best option for you. If you have pain here, then gently release and move the block out. The restorative variation is not right for you if you have pain. But if you're feeling good here and you want the hips to be a little bit higher, the next step is to lift the hips and move the block to the medium height. It's a little harder to find your sacrum on the block in this way because it's a more narrow surface, but you will find it. Again, not the tailbone, not the lower back. You want it on the sacrum itself. And the arms can just rest by your sides and just let yourself be there. It's a natural inversion without the effort. You're just letting yourself relax onto the block. Some people have even more mobility and they want to go a little bit higher in the hips. You're welcome to do this with the blocks. But this way, bringing it to the third level, is not the most stable, as it's the smallest surface area to balance. So instead, bring the two blocks on their low level, one on top of each other, and then let your hips rest on that. That'll bring you a little bit higher. And you could play around with how the blocks are stacked underneath your hips until you feel comfortable. And to come out of this, lift the hips up off the block. I like to lift my heels sometimes to give a little bit more space. Slide the blocks out from underneath you. And slowly and mindfully control your descent, bringing the hips down to the mat. And then take a nice deep belly breath.
Thank you for practicing with me. If you liked the class, please hit the like button and subscribe to my YouTube channel. And be sure to click the bell for email notifications when new videos are released. Let me know how you felt after doing this practice in the comments below. I'd love to hear your feedback. Also, if you have a request for a specific focus or tutorial, please ask in the comments below. Please share this video if you know someone who might enjoy it. Be well and remember to breathe. See you next time.